Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon, and today we're going to be talking about the two most important concepts that a tank support needs to follow, and we have a game that shows exactly how to do that. So obviously there's a lot of really important things to understand in any role, but overall the two most important concepts in my opinion are understanding tempo properly as a support and understanding when to roam, again as a tank support specifically. Obviously this stuff still applies to enchanters, but for tanks, this is where this is really the most important, and they're the best at kind of abusing these things. So early on the lane phase, we're not going to talk a lot about. I have plenty of videos on dual lane laning, and we'll have videos probably, at some point before we end up getting Sovereign on support, where we have a video dedicated to laning as well. So as we do go over this lane phase, I'm mostly just going to explain to you guys tempo and explain sort of what we're going to see later on in the game. So overall tempo basically means kind of like your pacing in the game, or the way that I think about tempo is that it's kind of turn-based, or Wild Rift is a turn-based game. And so essentially think about it this way. If you've spent your gold, you've already recalled, and you get back to lane, it's kind of your turn if the enemy hasn't yet recalled. Because say I went and I just spent 2,000 gold, and the enemy have still not spent any gold. I have 2,000 more gold, it's basically my turn to make a play because I'm a lot stronger. Or say that my jungler is on my side of the map and their jungler is on the other side, it's my turn because we have the numbers advantage. So having numbers advantage, having gold spent, having higher HP, higher mana, all of this kind of leads to it being your turn to make a play. And then obviously when you are ahead in the game, you have more turns. So it's like, again, if say our team as a whole has a 5k gold lead, we have a lot more turns and a lot more abilities to make plays overall. However, it doesn't mean it's always our turn, because maybe one of our teammates gets caught and died, and maybe he had 10,000 gold. Well, now we're functionally down 5,000 gold until he respawns. Or maybe on the top side of the map, even though we're ahead, we have one less member because, again, our jungler might be somewhere else. So understanding this concept and then how to sort of screw with the enemy's tempo is what you're going to see a little later on in this gameplay. And then the concept of roaming is something we're going to talk about pretty soon here as well. So going into roaming, the main thing you're looking for with roaming is, can you have a bigger impact somewhere else compared to being in your lane? So the two things you're looking at are, how likely is it for me to do something on that lane, another lane that I go to, and how likely is it for my ADC to survive when I do roam? So the way to know that your ADC is likely to survive is first going to be looking at the matchup. So for example here, Lucian into Twitch and Lulu. Twitch and Lulu are not scary champions. Like, they're not gonna, go and turret dive him under tower. Generally, most enchanters are pretty bad at turret diving or hard pressuring 1v2s. Whereas champions like, if it's Lucian Nami, like, that's gonna be pretty scary. But for the most part, enchanters are not the most scary. But if it's something like a Draven Alistar, it is gonna be scary. Also, just really quick, I wanna just talk about the small thresh mechanic. You can cancel Pantheon E, or Pantheon Stun, whichever ability it is. If he jumps on you and you flay backwards like this, you use your third ability backwards, and he jumps onto you, you're going to cancel it. So just watch this real quick. You see how I canceled that? Now he doesn't have his thing. I just wanted to point that out for those that are interested in Thresh specifically. I thought my teammate's dashing over the wall. Sadly, bad lantern by me. He dies. Regardless, again, going back into the concept of roaming. So again, champs like Draven plus Thresh or Draven Alistar, like these types of champs can dive a lot better. They have high damage. They have good CC. So you want to look at that. And then you want to look at your own ADC. So a champion with mobility and range is going to be better than a champion with low mobility and no range at surviving on their own. So high mobility, high range like Ezreal, super good at surviving. Low range but high mobility like Lucian, decent at surviving. Neither, like Varus, very bad at surviving. So you kind of have these different levels, and you're just taking into account how likely you think it is for them to survive. With those factors, obviously it's going to be game dependent, but that's what you're going to look for. The more of those factors that are present, the easier it's going to be to roam. So then, where do we roam or why? So here, for example, this is going to be a great time. I think I roam here. Yeah, I do. So my Lucian stays here. So the first reason is, my Lucian stays. He's about to push a wave. If Lucian pushes the wave, I don't have much to do in that lane when there's no wave. So when I'm looking to another lane, I'm looking, is there a wave present? So if we look mid lane, there's a wave present. If we look top wave, there's also a wave that's about to be present there. But obviously, then we're also looking at health bars. So my Fiora is very, very low right now, for example, as we can see there. And the set is obviously pushing pretty deep under the tower, and he's pretty low. So since the health bars are low, since the wave is showing that that the enemy's set is going to push, pretty deep under the tower, it makes sense to roam here. And then also you're going to take into account jungle location. If we look at it right now, the jungler's blue buff is currently spawning. However, we know that he's already been inefficient because that's just what we've been able to tell throughout the game. So we know his red side's also up, so it's likely that their jungler is going to be there because Again, he was so inefficient that now his blue side's starting to spawn, but he still hasn't cleared his red side. We knew that because of the earlier factors into the game, just of when we saw Pantheon. And where we saw him and whatnot. And so because of all those reasons, we know jungle's likely to gank on enemy team. Our jungler's there, which also makes it, you know, more of our turn, so to speak. And then the low health bars and the wave pushing towards our turret meant that it's very likely that we can get a roam off. Now, unfortunately, my Lucian sucks and dies anyways. But again, that's not something you can always control. Sometimes your teammate will die. Regardless, we want to make sure we get more value out of our roam. So we're going to use our Demolish to get a proc on the turret, and we're going to push the wave out with our team. So after you do get a roam to work out, make sure you try to stick around to get more value out of it when possible. However, if your ADC is in a lot of danger, you might need to recall right away to try to go protect them. So let's say the wave was pushing near under the Lucian's turret, and Lucian was, you know, dying, or looked like he was going to die soon, but I thought I could get there in time. I would have recalled right away, but he was already dead, and so it made more sense to try to squeeze as much as we could out of that top lane. And then a very common thing, now this is going to relate to tempo again. So another thing with tempo is, of course, you have the ability to make more plays if your lanes are pushed. So that's another factor that goes into tempo. And here, I want to help my mid laner push the wave quickly. And this is very commonly going to be a thing that we do. You see, I even lantern to get him here quicker, and then we just push the wave right away. So what this allows us to do is, again, it gives us a turn to make a play somewhere. It allows Orianna to look to roam bot side with me. It allows, you know, a potential turret dive or a numbers advantage, whatever. Now Orianna sticks in lane instead. Mistake by her. She could have roamed here. We would have been able to get more value. Not the end of the world though. You're not always going to, you know, get your teammates to do what you want. But regardless, the fact that we pushed that lane gave us the initial priority, that we even do have Orianna covering us here later, so we can be a little risky, take a free turret plate with our Demolish, and just overall we're in a pretty good spot. And then here, I'm basically trying to mess with the enemy tempo. And a very common thing is when you see the enemy want to recall, you want to just try to stop them. So here I see Twitch is going to recall. I know we have a numbers advantage right now because Twitch is low. Pantheon is probably here, but my Olaf is still nearby and we have 3 people right here. And I'm Thresh. I'm not going to die if I go Hex Flash under here to Twitch and Lulu. They're pretty weak early game. And so I'm just going here to stop the Twitch from recalling. Because the longer he's stuck here without spending his gold and on the lower mana, lower health, etc., the better it is for us. Like him sticking around here is just not good for him. It ends up then you're going to see leading to his ultimate death. Somehow Lucian does die, but it's really not the end of the world because us screwing over their tempo when we had, again, the turn because our jungle is here. We had the health advantage. We had the recall advantage. It means that we get to make the play. And when they try to make a play on our turn, this is what happens, is they die very frequently. And again, as a tank support, this is very, very important because you're largely looking for these types of picks and whatnot. Whereas when you're an enchanter, you're a lot more reactive. You know, you're like, okay, I'm just going to sit and scale. Like Twitch and Lulu, the longer the game goes, the happier they are. I need to do something. I'm Thresh Lucian. Like it's on me to actually make plays happen. And that's how I'm going to do it, is utilizing these two concepts, the concept of tempo and roaming. So again here, why do I roam top side initially? Obviously Herald's there. I want to see if I can hover to stop Herald. And then again, I'm going mid because I'm thinking, where is he probably going to drop Herald? Most of the time they're going to look for mid lane. And obviously he's coming from the top side. So we just want to hover there, make sure he can't get anything out of this. And so even though he does get me pretty low health, I have Warmogs, which means like Warmogs is a really good thing for tempo because you can kind of take a lot of damage and not care. And then here again, you see I literally just ignite the Yone to stop his recall. And you're going to see I try to go around. I don't end up stopping it, but I try to go around to just continue stopping him. And what this ends up doing is giving us time to hit the turret. Because if Yone is stuck here for that long, it means that we get to rotate into the mid first as Yone is still stuck recalling, so we get some turret damage. We don't get the full turret in this case, but very often you can get a full turret off of plays like stopping their recall, delaying their recall. So then when the wave comes, he's stuck for longer than, you know, he would want to be in his base buying items, healing up, etc. And it didn't end up working out super well, you know, outcome-wise here, but you can see how we're just constantly kind of, again, abusing tempo. And then why we're hovering mid lane kind of relates to my last video, where often you're going to hover mid, make sure you focus on that mid control, and then use the mid control to go into another lane. So yesterday's video kind of explains, you know, this whole concept of where to be after lane phase and where you're typically going to want to be. Here I did end up recalling. I probably could have just stayed around, but I had like no mana, so I knew like if I go into the fight, I'm not going to be very useful. So I decided to recall, but you could argue I could have stayed up there. Regardless, our teammates get a couple kills, so it's not the end of the world. Now we end up looking for the flash hook onto the Lulu, and we land it because I've never missed a flash hook in my life. And if you think that I have, you're just a stupid, dumb idiot. My voice did not crack there. Your voice cracked there. You did not hear that. Regardless, here again, you can see it's currently my turn to get vision. So this is again relating to the concept of tempo. So why is it my turn? It's because 3 of them are dead. 2 just respawned, but 3 were dead here. And so since 3 are dead here, and I have a higher health, I have higher health than Pantheon, I can just go here and screw with Pantheon. This gives me vision. It allows my team to know where Pantheon is, so it's harder for him to make plays. And obviously, again, it gives me a decent chance at killing him if I'm able to ever Lantern Orianna here, or I force people to come here. So either I force people to come here, which then you're going to see all of this pressure gives Lucian the ability to go get mid turret. Like, these are the types of things that happen when you end up drawing a lot of pressure from one side of the map. Again, he doesn't fully kill it because they did eventually come, but drawing this pressure often makes it so you guys can get turrets elsewhere. Here, I even stay around for this turret here. I had pretty bad map awareness. I shouldn't have stayed around for this because the enemy do show up. But regardless, my death doesn't really matter too much here. If I do die, which I funnily don't, but it was still definitely a mistake, even though it worked out. But the point is, again, this death didn't matter a lot because there's no objective or anything. We're just abusing our turn, and since I stuck around a little later than when it was my turn, since the enemy started to respawn and they pushed the mid wave, that's why I ended up getting punished. Now, luckily, again, I lived. This is not like, oh, I played super well. I made a mistake here, and luckily it worked out. And that's because I made a mistake with tempo. I stuck around for a couple, seconds later than I should have. The initial messing with the Pantheon was really good because it screws him over, makes him stuck longer, and I got some of the, his camp. But then when I stick around once the enemy had respawned for a while, they'd push their mid wave. That's when it was no longer my turn, and not respecting that is often what leads to people throwing games, dying, etc. But again, worked out in this case, so obviously we're happy with that. And then here we're just trying to, once again, since this guy is low, he's going to want to recall. So we want to try to find him to stop his recall. Now we don't find him, but this is something you're going to be doing very often. Like it's already not our turn on top side. You can see they have big numbers advantage top side. I can't go and fight there. So my value is going to be, again, from just making the enemy late on recalls, making them staggered, make sure they just don't have, a great situation overall. Because if they're all, fighting together, full HP, full mana, they're going to be really happy. But if some of them haven't gotten a recall in a while, or they're split up, that's when we're happy, which is why we wanted to try to find that Yone there. But we obviously were not successful in doing so. And then here, we just end up finding a pick. There's nothing too much to say about all this. Just we find a pick on mid lane. Pantheon ends up dying from it. And we're able to just overall get decent control of the map because of this. So this is, again, relating more to the last video where we just want to hover mid lane or hover, around stronger laners. In this case, since we're a little stronger as a team, we can just use mid prio to then go into other parts of the map. And then I'm just fishing here for hooks so that my teammates can get dragon for free. Again, the enemy are too low health to really, do anything to us. So we just kind of pressure them and make them back off. So again, it's our turn to take the turret as our teammate is on the dragon, just getting it for free. So again, like this applies pressure. Similar to how top laners want to apply pressure through side laning, supports want to apply pressure by putting a numbers advantage somewhere, or by, essentially it's a numbers advantage, or whether it's I stop someone's recall so we have a brief numbers advantage because they had to recall late, or whether it is, obviously you're just on the side of the map that the enemy support isn't making a play, that type of thing. And then again, here we're going to see a mistake of my team with tempo. I end up recalling. I was a little greedy of a recall, but I make it out. My team also greeds their recall a bit, and when you greed your recalls like this, if you do get caught, this is when, again, it wasn't our turn. Like, we had to back up further and respect the fact that the enemy were able to be there. We didn't respect that, and that's what leads to, a rather negative situation where multiple of my teammates died. Here, we're pretty much just trying to stall at this point. We find a good pick onto the Lulu. We miss our flash hook because lag. I'm gonna pretend it was lag. That's my excuse. I didn't lag. Either way, again, we're able to at least find some picks at the end just because we are pretty strong, and we get a nice hook on that Lulu earlier, which worked out well. But again, you can see the mistake of tempo. Like, this is a very, very common mistake, and I find this happens with every role, by the way. It's not just support. You can utilize this in any role. Top laners very often will get a solo kill, stay up too long for a turret, get punished by jungle, or get punished and, they can't recall, and then they get screwed over. It's a very, very common thing that happens in a lot of rules, but support, tank support specifically, is like the rule where I would say it's the most important concept. Again, alongside that, roaming. Also, I didn't even notice my Lucian build, but he has Collector Trinity Force for some reason. I didn't notice that during the game. That's weird. I don't know why he's doing that. Don't do that if you're watching this video and you play Lucian. But yeah, just wanted to kind of talk about like those main concepts, because again, it's definitely the most important stuff for supports to understand. Again, the roaming stuff early game is, as we kind of spoke about, with the just making sure you take into account how dangerous it is to leave your ADC alone, the wave state, the enemy health bars, your teammates health bars, those types of things. Here we get a bit greedy, but regardless, our Fiora gets a bunch of free time on the turrets, so it's kind of fine, even though I got greedy and died for no reason. But yeah, like just those concepts are definitely some things to work on. So if you're like a tank support player and you don't really utilize those super well, those are definitely going to be things that you might want to think about a little more, especially the tempo thing, because you can also do the tempo sort of stuff earlier on in the game. I didn't really do it here, but sometimes you can stop an enemy recall. Say that your teammate dies, but the enemy are both low and you're pretty high health. You just go and you just keep trying to like stop them from recalling. You just fish for a hook, make sure they have to recall far back rather than, you know, letting them greed their recall. And that's like another way to kind of abuse tempo. And make sure you know jungle pathing as well, because you don't want to be doing that when enemy jungle could be pathing towards you. So that's overall it for the video. Just wanted to kind of talk about, again, like the most important concepts for support. Overall, right now we're 76 marks, or 24 marks from Sovereign solo queue support, which is, again, it would be our 4th role. We've gotten 3 roles so far, just don't have Baron lane and don't have support. I think that I can get support. I don't think I'll get Baron lane. I think getting 5 will be hard, because we only have like 2 weeks left, I think. A little less than 2 weeks even at this point. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.